This hand is from the Super High Roll Bowl earlier this year between Daniel Negreanu and Mikita, two top-notch players. So it's a great hand to watch, and I remember watching it at the time, kind of live on the stream, and kind of was amazed by the end results. So the hand starts off with Daniel Negreanu opening under the gun, seven-handed with Jack 10 suited. Pretty standard open, especially deep stacked. Great hand that can make a lot of strong holdings. Mikita flats in the next seat with pocket nines. Very standard call here. Maybe he's going to free bet sort of very small percentage, like 10% at the time here, just so that he can have that in his free bet range. But he wants to flat here the majority of the time with this hand. And then actually, interestingly, Brian Rust folds Queen 9 suited in the next seat, which is a good fold, I think, but a hand that most sort of weaker players would play. Three ways is kind of a hand that's just going to get him in a lot of trouble. He's going to make worse flushes, worse pairs than the other two, just because they have such a strong range. And you can see, like, by the level of the players here, that everyone else has hands that, you know, you might potentially see weaker players put money into the pot here. Especially Ali in the big blind. He has Jack 8 off, great odds, but he understands he's up against two tight ranges and makes a good fold. Okay, so the flop comes 8, 6, 7 rainbow. Daniel has a backdoor flush draw, 2 overs and a gut shot to the nuts, and Mikita has overpair to the board and an open ender, so great flop for him. Daniel actually decides to bet a third of the pot here, which I think it's better to check most of the time on this board, especially in these positions, just because Mikita actually has much stronger range than Daniel. Even though he opened under the gun, Mikita's not flat in too many hands here. He's not, for example, going to call the raise here with King Jack offsuit broadways really. So this board, he has all the overpairs, all the sets, 2 pairs straights, and Daniel Negreanu has like a bunch of hands that miss the board, like King Queen offsuit, that just have very poor equity on this board. So he will be check folding most of those. So he also needs to check with a lot of his strong hands or middling hands. Jack 10 suited is kind of an in-between one, because he would like just to get a fold from maybe like Ace Jack with no backdoor, which a small bet will accomplish, which is great for him. But on the whole, I think he wants to be check calling here or check raising sometimes. So the turn card actually changes everything. It's the offsuit 9, so now Mikita makes top set, but Daniel Negreanu makes the top straight, and it's quite an interesting spot for Mikita here. He raised the flop, so he has the lead in the hand, and his hand has actually improved, but he's beaten by some other hands now that Negreanu could have. If they were deeper stacked, I think he would definitely keep betting on the turn, but I think he's a bit worried with his stack size, only having just under 2 times the pot left, that if he bets, he's kind of going to have to call off if Negreanu goes all in, and he's going to be up against the 10 a decent amount of time in that situation and sort of have less than 25% equity. So he decides to take the conservative route and check back and reevaluate the river and see if he can improve. And so the river is another 8, pairs the board, gives Mikita pretty much the virtual nuts, and Daniel still has a very strong hand. Bet sizing on the river particularly is actually really important in poker. At one point you can think you kind of have the nuts, and then someone sizes completely differently, and it's very important to be able to adjust your decisions based on that. It's definitely one of the hardest skills in poker, when a different card comes out or a different bet size than you're expecting, to be able to readjust and change your decision and come up with the right decision. This is a really tough spot in the river for Daniel here. Facing an overbet, he's actually now only really beaten a bluff, and he's obviously put Mikita on a strong range before the flop, and then raising the flop as well. He believes he has to have something here. So yeah, even though he has a nut straight, he beats any 10 on the board. With this sizing, Mikita's not really using this sizing ever with a 10, I don't think. And then Mikita makes a very big bet. He bets like 125% pot, so it's like overbet. And now it's pretty crazy. Daniel instantly realizes his hand is just kind of a bluff catcher. So Mikita's not really betting 10 for this size on this board. So yeah, Daniel only really beats a bluff. And still you kind of expect him to call just because he's kind of set this up. He's played his hand. His hand's very under-repped. You can't really put him on Jack 10 really here. And it seems like it would be a good spot maybe if Mikita got to the river with air to go for it here. So at this point, Daniel's only beaten a bluff, but he has played his hand quite weak and passively, so he could easily have induced this bluff. So it's kind of a guessing game for him. He has a hand that, in theory, he shouldn't really fold. It's too strong, and it's against a world-class player. So you don't really want to deviate too much out of sort of GTO, but also he might think that with this sizing, Mikita's kind of being greedy with a full house, expecting Daniel to snap call with a straight or something like that. And yeah, it can go either way really. So it's definitely a tough spot for Daniel, and yeah, one I wouldn't envy being in. So it's pretty crazy that he ends up actually making the fold here, and is correct. It's like, it looks amazing because it's right. It's a tough one because if you start making these folds against players, it's like world-class players, then they are going to exploit you. But then again, Daniel isn't really known for making many folds. Definitely in game though, sometimes you just have also a weird sort of spidey sense feeling, your gut's telling you to fold, and there's definitely times I've listened to my gut over the theory and made an exploitable fold and been right, and yeah, other times you're wrong as well. So it's definitely a hand that could go either way, and I don't really know what the right or wrong answer is.